Elena Voss had mastered crises, market crashes, hostile takeovers, lawsuits clawing at her company's ankles, but none of those battles meant anything when she felt her son's small body collapse against her during the charity gala. One moment he was laughing, tugging at the sleeve of her evening gown, whispering that he wished the boring speeches would end. The next, she watched his knees buckle, his eyes roll back, his skin drain of color. Everything after that blurred into a chaos she could barely breathe through. "Liam!" she screamed, her voice shattering like glass on marble. The music cut abruptly, guests frozen mid-sip, mid-smile, mid-step. Security swept toward her, crowding around the boy as Elena fell to her knees, cupping his face with trembling hands. She didn't care that her gown's fabric dragged across the floor, that her diamond bracelet snapped as she reached for him. Nothing mattered but the stillness of her son's lips, the frightening limpness of his small fingers. Paramedics rushed in within minutes, but to Elena, it felt like hours. She couldn't stop herself from leaning close, whispering his name over and over as if her voice alone could pull him back. The ambulance ride was a nightmare of sirens, flashing lights, and a doctor gripping her shoulder with professional urgency. "We'll stabilize him. Stay with us, Ms. Voss. We're moving as fast as we can." At the hospital, everything happened too quickly and painfully slowly at once. Liam was wheeled away, vanishing behind tall double doors, leaving Elena standing in the hallway like a ghost of herself. She tried pacing, sitting, standing, but nothing eased the terror pumping ice through her veins. Every second without news felt like a knife twisting deeper. Finally, a doctor approached, tall, broad-shouldered, his expression too serious to offer comfort. "Ms. Voss, your son is suffering from acute hemolytic anemia. He needs an emergency transfusion. But there's a complication." The pause made her blood freeze. "What complication?" "His blood type is extremely rare. We don't have any units left in our regional banks. We've put out emergency requests, but we can't guarantee how fast a match will respond." Elena's throat closed. "Find someone. I don't care how. Just find them." "We're trying," he said gently. "But time is running out." She couldn't breathe, couldn't stand. She sank into a chair, elbows on her knees, fingers gripping her temples. Billionaires weren't supposed to feel helpless. They bought solutions. They commanded outcomes. But no amount of money could conjure the right blood type out of thin air. She refused to sob. Not here, not in front of staff, not where walls echoed, but tears slipped through anyway. Minutes crawled. Nurses whispered. Machines beeped through the doors. Every sound made her flinch. She sent her team searching hospitals, laboratories, private clinics. She made calls she hadn't made in years. She barked orders. She begged. But the world didn't bend the way she needed it to. She was still fumbling with her phone, knuckles white, when a nurse rushed in, breathless. "We found a match." Someone responded to the emergency broadcast. "He's already here." Elena shot to her feet so fast her chair toppled. "Who? Where?" But the answer hit her like a slap the second the man stepped into view. He was tall, lean, wearing a faded jacket with frayed cuffs and boots that had seen years of hard work. His hair was messy, his jaw shadowed, his eyes filled with a mix of worry and determination. A little girl peeked from behind him, clutching a stuffed bear missing one eye. Elena's stomach twisted. She remembered him. 3 weeks ago, the cafe near downtown. She'd been waiting for her business partner, and all the tables had been full except the one she'd claimed with her purse. The man had approached politely, his daughter hiding behind him, and asked if they could sit since she wasn't using it yet. She remembered how she'd looked him over, the grease on his collar, the tired lines on his face, the dirt under his nails. And the way her voice had tightened with disdain when she told him, "People like you can wait." She'd watched something flicker in his eyes, hurt, maybe, but he'd simply nodded and walked away with his daughter. Now he stood in front of her as the man who could save her son's life. "Are you the match?" she whispered, shame burning her tongue. He nodded. "They told me a kid needed help. You came immediately." Her voice cracked. "Of course." He shrugged as if it were obvious. "I was already in the area. My daughter and I were grabbing dinner when they called. A child's life is more important than food." His daughter tugged on his sleeve, looking up at him with trust that made Elena's chest ache. A doctor gestured. "We need him now." The man squeezed his daughter's shoulder. "Stay here, Rosie. I'll be right back." The girl nodded bravely, but her small fingers clung to his jacket until the last moment. Elena watched him enter the donation room. Through the glass, she saw him lie on the bed, roll up his sleeve, and close his eyes as the needle slid in. Blood, the exact blood her son desperately needed, filled the clear tube. She pressed a trembling hand to the window, the weight of everything crashing into her at once. Her pride, her cruelty, her blindness, all of it felt obscene now, grotesque, next to the quiet heroism of the man she'd dismissed. But he didn't look at her with anger. He didn't smirk or remind her of the cafe. He just breathed deeply, his face calm despite the exhaustion etched into it. His daughter waited outside, clutching her bear, swinging her little legs as if trusting completely that everything would be okay if her father was there. Elena lowered her head, a broken whisper escaping her lips. Please let this save him, please. When the nurses rushed the blood to the operating room, she approached the bed where the man rested, pale but steady. Thank you, she managed, voice raw. I don't deserve your kindness. But thank you for my son's life. He gave her a tired smile. Just hope your boy gets better. Kids shouldn't suffer. His simplicity, his sincerity, pierced her more deeply than any accusation ever could. For the first time in years, Elena Voss, the woman who commanded empires, felt small. And deeply, painfully grateful to the man she once mocked. Liam's eyelashes fluttered a full week after the transfusion, a tiny, fragile movement that made Elena gasp so loudly the nurse jumped. She leaned closer, barely breathing, afraid the moment would vanish like a dream. Then his eyes opened, unfocused but alive, and her heart fractured with relief so overwhelming she had to grip the rail of his bed to stay upright. Mom. His voice was thin, sleepy. I'm here, she whispered, stroking his hair, brushing her thumb under his eye the way she had when he was a toddler. I'm right here, sweetheart. He managed a faint smile before exhaustion pulled him back into another gentle sleep, but it didn't matter, he was safe. The nightmare had finally loosened its grip. Doctors came and went, confirming what she already knew, he would recover. Her son would live. The gratitude swelling inside her was heavier than anything she'd ever carried. And beneath that gratitude ran something else, a guilt that gnawed, restless and sharp. She owed his survival to a man she'd treated with disdain. By the next afternoon, when Liam was stable enough for brief visits, she finally gathered the courage to search for the donor, Daniel. She'd learned his name from the hospital records, which she'd stared at longer than necessary, memorizing every detail. Single father, auto mechanic, volunteer donor for 8 years, emergency responder for 2. Nothing about him fit the way she'd judged him. She found him in the children's wing, kneeling beside a broken hospital cart. His daughter watched him with the earnest focus only a child could give, her legs swinging from a bench too tall for her. Daniel had a screwdriver between his teeth and oil stains on his hands, and despite the sterile hospital light, there was something warm, steady, quietly strong about him. When he noticed her, he stood quickly, wiping his palms on his jeans as if he wasn't sure how clean he needed to be in the presence of a billionaire. That small gesture, humility where she deserved none, made her throat tighten. How's your son? He asked, voice gentle. He woke up this morning. The words nearly broke her. Thanks to you. He smiled, the slow, humble kind that seemed to belong to a man who never realized how extraordinary he truly was. I'm glad. That's all that matters. She shook her head, stepping closer. No, it's not all. I owe you more gratitude than I can express. You don't owe me anything, he said softly. I just gave blood. People do it every day. The simplicity of it, the way he refused to make himself a hero, made her chest ache. She had spent years surrounded by men who bragged over crumbs of decency, who recited favors like debts to be repaid. And here he was, a man who saved her child's life and stood there like it was nothing more than holding open a door. I also owe you an apology, she added, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound composed. Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion at first, until understanding slowly dawned. His eyes softened, then flicked away as he exhaled through his nose. You don't need to. I do, she insisted. At the cafe, I treated you with such arrogance. I spoke to you as if you were beneath me. I judged your clothes, your hands, your life, without knowing anything about you. And you still came running when my son needed help. Silence stretched between them, thick but gentle. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable being the center of remorse. Look, you were having a bad day. It happens. That doesn't excuse me, she said quietly. His daughter tugged at his sleeve, looking curiously between them. Daddy, is she the lady from the cafe? The one who didn't let us sit? Daniel's face went crimson. Rosie. Yes, Elena said before he could try to protect her pride. She crouched to meet the little girl's eyes. I was the lady. And I'm very sorry. I shouldn't have been unkind. I hope you can forgive me. Rosie studied her for a long moment with a seriousness far too big for her small body. Then she nodded, her lips curving into a gentle smile. Daddy says people aren't bad. They just get sad or scared sometimes. Elena felt something loosen in her chest, something old, stiff, and heavy. Your daddy is very wise. Daniel coughed awkwardly. She's giving me too much credit. She gets her wisdom from cartoons. Rosie giggled. Elena laughed too, softly, unexpectedly. It made the hospital hallway seem brighter. She didn't leave after that. She stayed while Daniel finished fixing the cart, passing him screws when he needed them. She listened to Rosie ramble about her school project involving a cardboard volcano. She watched Daniel's face soften each time he looked at his daughter, seeing in him the kind of warmth she had long believed didn't exist in men anymore. There was no pretense in him. No performance. No arrogance. Only a quiet steadiness that felt both foreign and painfully familiar, something she realized she had been starving for without knowing it. He didn't ask her about her wealth or her company. He didn't fawn or withdraw. He just treated her like someone human. And that, strangely, was more disarming than disrespect had ever been. When visiting hours ended, Daniel stood, brushing his hands on his jeans again. We should get going. Rosie's got school in the morning. The thought of him walking away, of her debt hanging unresolved, of something delicate and new slipping through her fingers, filled her with a sudden, sharp panic. Daniel, she called before she could stop herself. He turned, eyebrows raised. She hesitated, surprised by how nervous she felt. Elena Voss didn't get nervous. Not in negotiations, not in court, not in any situation that demanded control. But this vulnerable moment, unsettled her deeply. I'd like to thank you properly, she said. Not as a transaction, not out of obligation, but because I want to. Could I take you and Rosie to dinner? Somewhere you both like. Rosie's eyes lit up. Can we get fries? Elena smiled, something warm blooming in her chest. As many as you want. Daniel looked between them, uncertainty softening into something warm and reluctant and real. All right, he said at last. But only if you promise not to apologize all night. I'm not used to being treated like a saint. She stepped closer, her voice going soft. You're not a saint. You're a good man. And that's rarer. He swallowed, eyes dropping for a moment. Her heartbeat quickened at the way he tried to hide the smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Dinner sounds nice, he admitted. They walked down the hallway together, a billionaire woman who felt strangely small, a mechanic who felt strangely significant, and a little girl skipping between them with her one-eyed bear. And in the simple rhythm of their steps, Elena felt the first faint flutter of something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope.